Hi, Uzma.
Hey Kate, how are you? How's it
I'm great.
going?
I'm good. How are
Good,
you?
good. How was your morning today?
It was good. But before we talk about that, I wanted to welcome everybody to the Two Moms Save the World podcast. Thanks for listening. We're doing things a tad bit different today. I'm picking a subject today. Uzma does not know what I'm talking about. And then the next episode, she's going to pick a subject and I'm not going to know. So I know I listened to a couple podcasts that do that. And I think that's kind of fun. It's kind of like Christmas, right?
Yeah, exactly. I'm so excited to surprise you with my topic, and I can't wait to hear what yours is also. So
Oh,
it's
it
kind of like a
sounds exciting.
mystery.
Yeah. Awesome. How was my morning? I'm now in just eating Christmas cookies. My mom sent me a big box of like biscotti Christmas cookies, bourbon balls. I ate all the bourbon balls. So I'm hopped up on Christmas cookies and coffee this morning. How's your morning?
My morning is kind of delayed. I've been having a really trouble sleeping. I don't know if it's whole like the midlife thing where I'm having insomnia, that I'm getting late, and then I'm just, the day is just going by so fast. And so I wasn't able to sleep. And so kind of like really excited for this podcast because it sets me in alignment and I learned such good things and I get to be with you. And so my
I
morning is going great.
I agree. I was talking to my daughter. I'm like, oh my gosh, I just feel so scattered right now. I'm not getting anything done. But then sitting down with you and recording some podcasts, I feel accomplished for the day.
Right, exactly.
So
If I
much
don't do
fun.
anything else, we've done this, right?
We podcasted. Yes. So last week I drove my daughter from St. Louis to Denver. And yeah, and we listened to one of my favorite podcasts, My Favorite Murder, which is so fun.
Yeah. How long is the drive? Because I
12
I am from
hours.
St. Louis, 12 hours. Okay, that's not bad.
No, we split it up. It was just, it was just a lot of college drama,
Yeah.
right? And it doesn't really rain here in Colorado. So it was pouring down rain in St. Louis as we're packing the car up. And I just was not equipped for the weather. So,
Yeah. Well,
so
those
there.
12-hour trips, did you have some good conversations?
We do. And, it's just, and she has an emotional support cat. So it was navigating the whole cat thing. And I probably shouldn't talk about this, but we stayed at a hotel that is pet friendly. But when my husband booked it, he's like, oh my God, I think I have to like pay $50 extra for the cat. So we just kind of snuck him into the back. He's a good cat. He doesn't like he just sleeps. He's not destructive, nothing like that. So and we cleaned up so well after, he doesn't make a mess, but there's like some box litter that kind of hangs out. We make sure we just clean up really, really well, which is why I assume they charge for your cat because litter box and they scratch stuff and things like that. It was perfectly fine.
Awesome. So just don't tell us the hotel or the city and you'll be just great.
That's right. I won't tell you that I stayed in the city in Kansas that I
Yeah.
stayed in. I'll never know.
Yeah, you're good at keeping secrets, it looks like.
Oh yeah, I mean it made it a kind of fun because I'm like, I went and checked in and I was like, hey, there's a back door. I'll let you in the back door, with the cat. And she's got a backpack. And it's got this big like plastic bubble. So like if you look on her back, if you look at her from the front, you just think she has a backpack on, but you look at the back and you just see Yoshi, his name's Yoshi, just sitting in the backpack in this big bubble. And he had hurt himself. So he had this little kitty cat cone on too. So
Oh,
it's just
cute, cute. Oh my gosh. Yeah, we have a cat and I was just looking through the internet and they have those palm puppies or those tiny ones
yeah,
that are fit just like the palm of your hand. And it
yeah,
was so cute. And I was like, oh my gosh, I really want to get one.
you
But,
should.
I want to carry it around everywhere I go like a little baby.
Yeah,
And
I see people with those little tiny dogs all the time, and I'm like, okay, just because your dog's small doesn't mean you can bring it in Costco.
well, that's what I would do with this puppy. I would bring it to Costco. I would take it everywhere with me to dinner, dining. It would be just like my little
Yeah,
toy, my
you
real
bring it
stuffed
everywhere.
animal. So,
Cool.
what's the topic?
Intuition. We're going to talk about intuition.
Love it, love it, love it. That's like one of my favorite things.
But I'm specifically like what I want to talk about with intuition. We've got like I've got my 4 things I want to talk about. And there's the like, what is it? Why is it important? All that bullshit. But there's also, I wanted to talk about the 4 clairs. The four
Okay.
clairs that are associated with intuition. Do you know what clairs are? Do you
No,
know?
that was my next question. What are clairs?
So it's a French word meaning clear, and it's like your clairvoyancy, right? Clairvoyance, clairsentient, claircognizance, and clairaudient, which I'm very clairaudient. So I thought it'd be fun to talk about because I feel like, people are like, oh, I don't trust my intuition, or I don't know what it feels like. I don't know this, that, or the other thing, but we all have these different ways that we perceive kind of the world around us. So I wanted to talk about those different ways that we get messages um, from the universe, from the realm, and kind of what that looks like for each one of us.
That's so cool. Let's go for it.
Let's do it, right?
Yes, let's do it. Yes.
All right. So, oh my gosh, I did a master class on this. So I have all these really great notes. So what is intuition? When I say what is intuition to you, what comes up? What do you think?
ESP, knowing things, feelings, knowing that I should do something, but most of the time I don't. That's what I want to know. Like, do my intuition, like when I think of things or I feel things, why don't I act on that? Because I'm like, oh, I shouldn't listen to that. That's not true. But it's really weird. One thing is that, like, I know when people are going to be arriving at my house. Like, if I'll sit there and I'll get this big feeling that, okay, my son is going to come in that door, or my husband is going to drive in the driveway, and it happens.
Oh,
That's the
that's
one.
yeah.
That's the one intuition that always happens. Like, I know, because I know, like, they're coming home. So I'm like, oh, I just know they're coming home at this time. But I literally, when I think about them, they walk through the door
Oh
every
yeah.
single time.
That's definitely your intuition. And we'll talk about what clair, because that's one of the clairs. So why do you think we don't follow our intuition? Because you talked about that. Like, so when you get a feeling to do something, so what does that look like for you? And why do you think you don't do it? Do you know?
Like, if I feel like, oh, I should call somebody, or maybe I should do this right thing, I don't do it because I'm like, this is just a feeling. Intuition, sometimes I think it's not real. I just think
Yeah.
it's just like, just something that, I'm supposed to follow. It's just my mind talking.
It's your
It's really
ego,
not, it's
girl.
my ego. Exactly. That's it.
It's your ego. And that's how like it's your intuition speaking to you. When it's basically just non-judgmental. It's like, hey, you need to
Yeah.
do this thing. And so yeah, you're supposed to take action and do that thing. It's when we we start thinking about it too much, that our ego's like, no, you don't need to do that thing. That person doesn't want to hear from you, or that's ridiculous. Those things that override that knowing. And I think that's why a lot of people don't follow their intuition, because their ego kicks in, they let their mind take over. And so then they feel like, well, every time I follow my intuition, it just doesn't work out. But they're never really following their intuition because they're letting their ego take over. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that totally makes sense. But one thing I have to tell you is that if I get a feeling that I'm thinking about somebody, I always text or I call them.
Good.
I always do. If I'll call, I just make sure that when I get that feeling about somebody that I haven't talked to them in a long time, or I need to speak to them, I always text or call. Is that something that is good?
Yes. Oh, of course. It's always good to connect with people. Well, I mean, think about it this way. Like, our intuition is all these kind of knowings, right? These things, because we're connected to each other, right? We're all connected. You can't not like, you can't just think you're acting individually all the time. Like, we are all connected. So if you get like this thought that, or feeling that I should call this person, it might not even be necessarily for your benefit, but it could be for theirs, right? So
Okay.
so you call them, you're like, oh, I was thinking about you, and you have this conversation, and there's something in that conversation that person needed from you, or vice versa. So sometimes we think all the time, like, I fall into this category, and we all do, because we're so egotistical in ways, is we always wonder like what we're going to get out of it, right? Like, oh, okay, so I'm getting this thought, I should call this person. Maybe there is some message that they need to give me, instead of thinking, well, it might be something that I am offering them that I just don't know about, just something that they need to hear from me. So, right, we're always so just hell
Yeah.
bent on what am I getting of
I
this.
love that. I love that, to getting rid of that ego and just be like you said, calling
Yeah,
somebody, maybe they needed me or I needed them. I
that's
love
right.
that. It goes both ways.
It does go both
That
ways.
just was just like, ooh, for me. I got shivers. So
Oh,
that's
that's
awesome.
awesome.
Yeah. So why do you think that, we don't listen to our ego? Why do we allow the ego to take over the intuition?
It is the old lizard brain paradigm of your mind's trying to keep you the same. I was just reading something the other day that is so, it's so true. Like your mind is so used to keeping you safe, right? And that's why a lot of negative thoughts come up of, oh no, you shouldn't do this and you shouldn't do that, and that person's out to get you because
Yeah.
your brain's just trying to keep you safe. So we that kind of overrides us, right? And it keeps us in fear. And fear is good in some ways because it does keep us safe, but we don't need to be kept as safe as we used to be, right? Like when we were um, like boxing saber-tooth tigers and stuff like that, right? Like we don't
Yeah.
need that as much. So fear kind of dominates our thought patterns a lot. And so we don't do things, or we think, we wonder what people are going to think about us. Like, oh, I'm going to call this person. I haven't talked to them in 2 years. They're going to think I'm crazy for calling them or whatever. So I think that's why we don't just like when something like that comes up and there's no judgment attached to it, instead of just like, bam, I'm going to do it. We wait too long and we let
Yeah.
our ego take over. That's trying to keep us safe. Oh, so the thing I was reading was about how like our negative thoughts are our mind also wants to do the things that are more efficient, right? So having new thoughts, it takes more energy than
Right.
just reverting back to the old thoughts.
This is so true.
Yeah, right?
Exactly. Yeah. And the thing about hesitation and letting the ego come in, that's the same thing with action and goals too.
Yeah.
When you want to, take action, your thoughts are what stops you, which is the ego. So
Yeah,
it's kind of like a full circle everything, the
it is.
hesitation,
Yeah,
right? The ego comes in. Yeah.
absolutely true.
Yeah. Well, as we're talking, I'm just thinking about mother's intuition, how they say, oh, mother's intuition. That's something like, do you think, is that a true thing? Because that's where my fear is. They always say a mother's intuition is true. And then, when you think things about your kids, that's so scary. So
Yeah,
should I
well,
be
because
thinking those
yeah,
scary
we're so
things?
connected.
Yeah.
Yeah. So here's an intuition story. So we had just moved to Colorado, and my son, I think we'd probably been here for a year, and me and my daughter and my daughter and my husband were at like an open house for a school we wanted to send my son to, and my son was on a camping trip. Like here in Colorado, when you're in sixth grade, you go for a week. I forget what it's called. It's not Outward Bound, maybe it's Outward Bound, something like that. And you just go camping. You talk about nature. You do hikes and stuff like that. And it was a Thursday night, and I got a phone call, and we're sitting in this presentation and my phone rings, and it's a 303 number. And I'm like, well, who, like, we've only been here about a year. I don't know many people with 303
Yeah.
numbers, whatever. So my husband looked at me and he's like, shh, like, what are you doing? Like, what are you doing? Don't
Yeah.
answer the phone. And I'm sitting there and I'm like, no, I gotta take this call. Like, and I declined the call. I got up and he's like, what are you doing? Like, this is important. Why aren't you sitting here listening? Why, like, the phone rang? You don't know the number. Why are you like, thought I was fucking crazy?
Yeah.
And so I got up, I walked out, and I called the number back, and it was where Maddox was camping. They're like, hey, FYI, this is totally normal, but he ate just a little bit of dinner and then vomited 5 times. Like he's
Oh,
vomited 5 times the past couple hours. And I'm like, what do you mean this is perfectly normal? And it's like an intern or an internist, like not really a doctor, but trying to be a doctor.
yeah.
And he's telling me, no, these kids get altitude sickness. We did a big hike today. Um, I'm sure he's going to be fine. He's sleeping right now. We just wanted to let you know. And I was like, let me know. I'm on my way. Like, I'm getting my kid. I have to get my kid.
Yeah.
He, long story short, next day, like I took him to the hospital. My husband and I took him to the hospital, appendicitis.
Oh my gosh.
So that's your intuition, right? Like, I don't care what everybody else is doing. I need to do this right now. And the feeling was just so strong that no, 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 you need to call this number back. Like, no, this is super important. So that is your intuition. And it is a lot of times when we don't act on that, that bad things do happen,
Okay.
right? When it's that strong and you're like, wait a minute, something. My neighbor went to a choir concert or something for, elementary school kids. And I was like, why are you going? That doesn't sound like a good idea, right? These kids have not been vaccinated. Long story short, again, her daughter ended up with COVID and gave it to all the kids on our street. So, but she had this feeling like we shouldn't go. And her husband's like, you're just being ridiculous. Our kid really wants to go. We've been on lockdown for so long. It's going to be fine. And she's like, I just have a bad feeling about this.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah.
So it is those times when we don't act. And that's why I think we don't trust our intuition. It's not because our intuition doesn't work. It's because we don't act. And so we're like, well, we give ourselves so many reasons why we didn't act and why it didn't work.
Oh, that makes so much sense. So if you have a feeling, you should act on it. You're saying, because if you don't act on it, something's bad is going to happen. And we're going to say to ourselves that intuition doesn't work.
Yeah.
Okay. Got it.
I think that's about right.
Yeah, that makes so much sense. Exactly. Because we're always like, no, 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 don't go with your gut feeling. Even
We
with this
do.
whole pandemic,
Yeah,
we know we shouldn't be doing things, but we're still doing it.
that's exactly right.
Right. And then we come home and we hear other people have gotten it, or we've been sick or exposed. And then we're like, we should have gone. We didn't listen to ourselves.
We didn't listen to ourselves. And I think what happens, talking about our societal norms again
Yeah.
we get influenced so much by other people, like, oh, you're just being ridiculous, right? Women hear that all the time. You're just being ridiculous. You're, crazy maybe comes into the mind. And we think we're overreacting when most of the times it really is, your inner knowing telling you, hey girl,
Exactly.
over here, do this thing. And it is when you get that thought of, oh, you're being crazy, that's the thought you have to get rid of, right? The thoughts that are more negative, like your intuition will always be kind of like even. It's going to be, just giving you that message, but not telling you you're some crazy bitch. So
Exactly. Well, we all have the fear of FOMO, fear of missing out.
that's right.
And then even during the pandemic or anything, oh, everybody else went, I didn't go, nobody got sick, and then everybody had a great time and I missed out. So
And
the
the one
next
thing
time,
that you don't realize
yeah,
is maybe the person that did get sick that you just don't know about, right?
yeah,
Or the person that's 2 or 3 removed from you that got sick, that it didn't get traced back to that thing, but that was the thing that got them sick, right?
exactly.
Oh, that's a lot.
That is a lot. Let's take a breath.
Yes,
Yeah.
let's take a breath. Okay, so you want to talk about the clairs?
I do. Let's go.
All right. All right. So I'm going to start with clairaudient because that's me. I
Okay.
am very clairaudient. So let me just talk a little bit about myself. Being clairaudient. So I love music and I'm very sensitive to sound. So my husband is one of 3 boys. And when they get together, I can't be in the same room. I have to remove they're just really loud and I'm just very sensitive to sound, right? And when I get messages, right, from my intuition and, we're all plugged in together. So you get messages from the universe, from spirit, source, whatever you call it, because we're all part of this big whole thing. And we are able, that's quantum physics too, right? Being able to plug into the quantum field to be plugged into other people and experiences, right? So I hear stuff though, and I don't necessarily hear it audiently, like in my ears. I hear it in my head. Like I'll hear a message in my head. So that's clairaudient. Messages sound like somebody talking in your head. The voice is never mean or hurtful, right? The tone of the voice is almost the same, like even and calm all the time. So that's clairaudient.
So give me
Uh,
an example.
yeah.
Okay, I'm going to interrupt you. Give me an
Yeah.
example of a message that you've gotten, so I know kind of what an example is of clairaudient.
Okay, so clairaudient, like I always get them outside. Like most of the time, I will get messages when I'm outside, like walking my dog or whatever. And it will just be a message that tells me to do something a lot of times, like in, whether it's has something to do with my kids or my business, I will get and it might be something like, it might be an idea, like, hey, here's an idea that just runs through my head, but it does kind of feel like somebody talking in my head.
Okay.
I'm trying to think of like one specific that happened. um Most of the times it just tells me like, oh, you should write a post about this, like here's a topic that you need to talk about, just
Okay.
something like that.
Got it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that
Okay.
makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I've talked to a lot of people that kind of have that same thing. We call them downloads too, right? When you get messages, these downloads, but we get them in different ways. Um, and then there's clairvoyant. And I was listening to My Favorite Murder podcast, and they did this really cool one about this woman in Salem, Massachusetts, that was, she was a witch. And there was a murder there, and she saw it. Like she's like, I know where the woman is, I know who did it. Like the whole scene ran through her mind very vividly, and she told the police, like, this woman was dumped from a boat, she's got a weight wrapped around her, like it happened on this day, this guy did it, he was wearing this, like down to the T. So that's clairvoyant, right? When you have these clear like scenarios, these scenes that come up in your mind, they come to us sometimes in like a metaphor, right? It might not be exactly what's going on, it might be a metaphor that you see. Like if somebody's drowning, perhaps they're just really overwhelmed and not necessarily drowning. But this woman definitely was more clairvoyant. Like they used her in a couple murder investigations, and every single time down to, what they were wearing, she could see what happened, which I think is probably super cool, probably super scary too.
Yeah. So kind of like a psychic.
Yeah.
Like those psychics that you go to and you're talked to, or, the psychic investigators.
Yeah.
Those are probably clairvoyant people
They're
because
probably
they're the ones
seeing
who
more.
can see everything and
Yeah.
tell you and help you.
Exactly.
Okay. All right.
Okay. And then there's clairsentient. So it's when messages come to you as feelings. So I kind of relate this to like you walk into a room, right? And you can feel people's energy, and you can know like, oh, this person's sad, or this person's happy, or I should stay away from this person. So I feel like that's more like what clairsentient is all about. And probably what we most attribute our intuition to, right? Like just that feeling of danger. This person is feeling this way, or yeah. Have you ever walked into a room and you just feel all the emotion that's going on there?
Well, I'm thinking that, I'm a mixture of clairsentient and the first one. What was the first one?
Clairaudient.
Yeah, I'm a
Yeah,
mixture of that because I get downloads, but then I also can read people's energy. When I walk in a room, I
Yeah.
can sort of be like, they're a little off, or, they are not really who they're acting like. I can
Yeah.
feel that energy. So I can kind of lightly read people. So I'm a mixture of both.
Yeah, I think we all have a little bit of this. I don't know, like I don't feel like I have much clairvoyancy. I don't really see things in my mind ever. But I wonder if that isn't also related to like our dreams, right? You might get clairvoyant messages through your dreams. Um, Well, and so the fourth is claircognizance, and literally translated, it means that clear knowing. And that's like, so you have this one too, right? This is when you're like, I know when my son's coming home.
Yeah.
That's
So
your
maybe,
claircognizance.
can you be a mixture of two or three?
Oh yeah, I think we all probably have, one or two are more dominant than the others, but I think we all have, a little bit of all of them. And you can have all of them, like you can practice any of these.
Okay. So is ESP like intuition kind
Yeah,
of? Would you say that is the
yeah,
same kind of category? Because like what would
yeah,
happen to me is like I'll think about something or someone, and then 2 or 3 days later, either they'll call or I'll see it in a book, those words that I was thinking about. So that's what happens to me. Like whatever I get a big feeling, it won't
yeah.
happen now, but 2 or 3 days later, somehow or another, whatever I thought about comes to surface.
That's super cool. Yeah, that's that's also, it could be the power of intention as well, right? Like you have this overwhelming feeling about somebody, and everything's energy. It could be the energy that they start feeling from you that has them act a certain way.
Oh, that's kind of cool too.
Isn't that cool?
Yeah, that's really cool.
Yeah, so like part of like practicing your intuition and just being more connected to people is like focusing on that person, right? You can focus on that person. And a lot of times when you do that, then maybe they'll call you or text you or whatever. But we feel like we don't have powers, right? Like when I first went down this road on this journey of just being a more spiritual person, I was in the midst of all these amazing women who were healers. And I was like, wow, the gifts that they have, but we all have them. We just don't know it, or we just doubt it. But the more you use them, the better they get. And the more we trust them. And so we all have these powers, but don't, we don't realize the magical world that we live in.
Yeah, I also don't think that we tap into it. Like I was saying, like, you know what, I'll think about, oh yeah, I need to do this, or I should look into this project. And then I'll be like, oh, whatever. And then 3, 4 days later, it comes up or I see it, but I'm like, oh, this is just a fluke. We don't tap into it and we don't
Right.
really see the steps. We're just like, whatever, this is just luck. What would you say
Yeah.
to people who are like, yeah, whatever, Kate, intuition isn't a real thing?
Well, I would tell you, I'm looking for a quote that I have from, let me see if I can find it. Um, so what I would tell these people are that, let me see. No, I don't see it. What I would tell these people is that Albert Einstein believed this stuff 100%. So if Albert Einstein believes it, I think you should believe it too. Right. So Carl Jung, he was a famous psychiatrist, psychologist. He talks about how he talks about synchronicities, right? Like we think all the time that there are coincidences, and he's like, no, they're really synchronicities. They are things put in your pathway to get you to do stuff, right?
Right.
So you draw a correlation, like, wow, whoa, that's weird, that just happened. Deja vu, things like that are really more things to kind of prompt you into action. They're messages from the universe to say, hey, no, yeah, you need to do this. But yeah, so this is quantum physics too, right? Like Albert Einstein 100% believed in the magical world around us, that there has to be magic around us. And then the other thing I would say is, why wouldn't you want to live in a magical world?
Yes, true.
Right?
Yeah. I love this topic that you're talking about intuition, because ever since I've been little, I've always had like um this thing that I know things, and I'll tell
Yeah.
my mom, I just know things, and she'll be like, don't tell me, don't go take me into that world of yours, because my mom is just like, you're so spooky. My mom will tell me I'm spooky sometimes because I remember, I think I was like 16. I said, Mom, call grandma, call grandma. She's like, my grandma lived in Pakistan and my mom lived in the States. So they would call once a week. She's like, I
Right.
just called her 2 days ago. I'm like, no, call her, call her, call her. She's like, oh, no. And the next day she died. And so ever since then, my mom's
Oh,
like, what, if you tell me to call somebody, I'm going to do it. Right. Because I just had
Yeah.
this feeling that you have to talk to her. And even with like, my uncle or cousins, I'll be like, Mom, she'll be like, your thoughts are way out there. I'm like, Mom, this sounds crazy, but I know this is going to happen. Or Mom, this is the way,
Yeah.
my thought process is just really like out there. And so,
It,
so many people think I'm so weird, but that's what I think helps me go to the next level or be positive or have all the different businesses, because I just have this, just keep on moving forward. Just keep on doing the things that you're doing. If it works, it works. If it doesn't, it doesn't.
right. Well, and if it does, like, there's so much to unpack in what you've just talked about. And I feel like as children, we do know things, and it is that being told you're spooky or you're weird or there's something wrong with you, that we start to develop, like we start listening to our ego instead, right?
Yeah.
Instead of really just continuing down the path of the magic that we do have. We would live in such a much better world if we would just allow that to happen and blossom, right? You would be such a different person. Not that I don't love the
Yeah.
Uzma you are right
Yeah.
now, if that had been nurtured.
Yeah. Like for my mom, I still tell her weird things because I love the fact that she says I'm spooky and I freak her out.
That's so
But
cool. I love
yeah,
that.
but so I keep on telling her, she's the only person that I can tell too, because she'll be like, you're so spooky, and she'll laugh, and just I feel like, okay, she's listening to what I'm saying. But with friends or with other people, sometimes when I go out of the box, they look at me like I'm crazy, or I feel like I've said something wrong that
Mm-hmm.
doesn't go with the societal norms. So
Mm-hmm.
I think with that, I've stepped back a little bit, and I haven't told people, or I don't tell people what I'm really feeling or what I'm thinking. But I do have this really good friend, and we have lunch once a month. And she also has this intuition thing. Like
Yeah.
the visual one that you
Oh,
said.
clairvoyant.
Yeah, she's clairvoyant, and she knows things and she can see things.
That's cool.
So I've known this about her for years, and she hasn't told very many people. So we have lunch, and she'll be like, tell me what you think about this person, or what energy do you get from this person? So she helps me with that. And
That's
she's like, you're
amazing.
so right. You're so good. So I try to connect with her because she's one person that I can tell about my energies and the way I feel. Like, this is like,
Yeah.
people who listen to this who know me are gonna be like, oh my God, she's even more weirder than I thought.
Oh my God, no, I find this amazing. This is all, and this word is so overused, so I'm going to overuse it right now. This is authentic Uzma, right? This is your nature. This is who you're meant to be. Like, that is the magic of you.
Yeah.
And you need to unleash that more and use it, because that's the power that you have to help change the world. And right. And that's what you and I are here to do, right?
Well,
To,
you know
to
what? But
change the world.
even without all the businesses and the things that I've done, it's always been like, I do my stuff, but I gravitate to the women, to the human.
Yeah.
Like, I'm like, someone's like, I had a chutney company. Someone's like, oh, your chutney's so great. And I'm like, thank you. But thank you. I don't talk about the chutney. I'm like, so how do you feel when you taste it? What were you?
Oh, right.
what do you like about it? What were your emotions? I'm always like wanting to know why people feel this way. Like, even it's so funny. My son-in-law, when he got married, he did the mother and son dance, and he was crying. That's natural because he was getting married and he was dancing with his mom and he was crying. And then when he came to visit, I'm like, so tell me, why were you crying? What made you want to
What
cry?
was
Tell
coming
me
up?
what was coming up. And everyone's like, here she goes again. But I want to know those little things about people.
Well, that's crazy that you want to actually connect with people. And that's what the world is missing, right? You need to do more. I do love that about you. Like, whenever I comment on one of your posts, you're like, I want to go a little deeper.
Yeah. I want to know why you feel that way. Seriously, I'm like that with everybody. And I have to step back because sometimes I'm like, maybe people don't want to tell me I'm stepping over boundaries, but I have to know why. Like, if I see like on Facebook, like two stars are breaking up or holding hands and walking together, then I'm like going and investigating the stars. Like, who were they with before? Why do they like each other? How are they holding their hands? How are they looking at each other? I just really, really love to know the reasons why.
Why people connect the way they do.
Yes, yes, yes.
This is fascinating. This is a whole nother podcast too, right? Write that down.
Exactly. So,
That's amazing. See all these powers that you have.
yeah,
It's so much fun. Well, this is why I love reading oracle cards too, right? Like
yes.
I love reading oracle cards. And a lot of times when I do that, and I've just become from practice, from doing it so much, it's a great way for me to connect with someone else's energy, right? Like when they ask a question or I focus on them and pull a card for them. And then that's when I get the talking in my head.
Okay.
All of a sudden, all this stuff will be like blah, 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 into my head. And I'm like, oh, wait a minute. You need to know this, and this. So yeah, that's just a way of connecting with people, being able to kind of tap into their energy. And I get the messages that they need to hear. And I'll tell you what's so funny, when I first started doing that, especially when pulling a card, giving a message to somebody I kind of know, like your ego steps in there too. You're like, well, you know this about them, so this can't be true, right? And but the whole point is, no, this is the card they got. The message that just dropped into your head is what they need to hear. And in telling them, getting messages back, like they'll, send me instant messages and like, oh my God, you've no idea how that hit home, but I don't have any idea that, what my message, how it resonates to them unless they tell me. But it always winds up that way. They're like, and there's no way I would have known that. But the message that they got was really poignant to them.
Awesome.
It's fun. I don't know.
Yeah. So I'm gonna have you do a little plug-in. Tell us when you pull cards.
Oh, I do it Mondays in my group. Women Finding Peace, Purpose, Freedom, and Wealth. I think I'm going to start doing it on my personal Facebook page too. Like I really love doing it. Yeah, I don't know, maybe Thursdays, but not today.
Yeah, but you're so good at it though.
Too. But
You're
I
really
didn't
good
used
at
to
it.
be. It's practice. All this stuff takes practice, right? You just keep doing it. And the practice really means the trust, right?
Right. Right.
The practice means the trust to let my ego, like just put my ego down for a little bit and say, hey, why don't you just take a nap over here? And I'm going to trust what comes through
Yeah.
without any judgment.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly. Because whenever I listen to you pull cards, I'm like, that resonated. And you just pull the card and you just know what to say. And that's what I love. You just know what to say.
My
And it just comes with
clairaudient.
the flow. Exactly. So it's awesome. I love
Yeah.
it. When you do your daily pulls, and then you do daily pulls for everybody, a general one.
I do like just a general, what do you need to know today? Which is super fun.
Yeah.
When I forget, which I don't normally forget.
Then your Tuesday ones, you only take 3 people. So if people
Monday.
want to know.
Yeah,
Monday. Yeah,
Monday. You can also purchase a card pull from me at any time.
Yes, exactly. Nice plug-in. Yeah. So anything else we need to know about intuition?
Yeah, you need to trust it. Like trust it. Just start trusting it. And it is literally, mundane things. Like the last thing I will tell you is I get great parking spots all the time because I use my intuition.
Okay, so walk me through that, because my father used to always say, I always get the best parking spots. He was also very intuitive also. Ooh. He would never say he was a psychiatrist, but he knew things and felt things, but he never told anyone.
Oh, he was a psychiatrist. That's fascinating.
Yes. So he never told anyone, but he would always feel things. And I think I get a lot of the intuition from him.
Oh yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I have a daughter who's also very intuitive.
Yeah.
And I help her tap into that. Yeah. So
I will literally, if we are driving around looking for parking, or we get to somewhere and I'm like, oh, right, now I got to think about parking. I will literally stop for a second, just rub my hands together and close my eyes and be like, all right. Come on, intuition. I need to park. I want good parking. Yeah. And every single time I will just, okay, I'm going to make a left or a right. I will just let my intuition guide me, or no, just keep going straight. And I always there it is. There's my parking spot all the time. And this is living with intention too, right? That's just an intention I throw out there. Hey, universe, hook me up, give me a good parking space. And I think that's something easy they can deliver. It's our big dreams that they're like, okay, girl, you're gonna have to be patient. We got a lot of rearranging to do, but parking spot's an easy one. So I encourage you to try that with your intuition, right?
Yeah,
Parking.
that's a great step.
That's a good
Awesome.
first step.
Yeah, perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is great.
So fun talking to you.
It was so fun talking. For those of you who are listening, this is Two Moms Save the World with Kate and Uzma, and we just finished episode number 5. So,
Is
you
that
know,
right?
yes, number 5. Yes. So catch us on Instagram, check out our YouTube, sharing, care, listening, everything. Anything else, Kate, before we sign
No.
off?
No, do you have anything? I am so like, I've learned so much about you today.
Oh, yeah, I know. I let out more than
I
I
love
usually
it.
do.
I absolutely love it.
Yeah.
Let that gift shine, girl.
Awesome. I'm going to need you to help me tap more into that intuition.
I'm here. All
All
right.
right.
All right. Bye, everybody. Love
Bye.
you.
See you. Bye. Talk to you later.
Bye.